Let's look at 5 advantages of extremely curved swords that you might not have thought of. Hey folks, Matt Easton here, Schola Gladiatoria. So I've just got this awesome new shamshear from LK Chen, which I've got to say is absolutely gorgeous. Obviously there'll be a review of this coming in due course. But having such a curved blade, obviously I've got antique shamshear and stuff, but having a sharp one that I can actually use and cut things with, yes, you will be seeing that very, very soon, has given me a lot of thoughts about curved blades. And now, a lot of you, I've done a lot of videos in the past about curved versus straight blades, and a lot of you will be vaguely familiar with the basic advantages of straight blades and curved blades. But there are some more subtle advantages to extremely curved blades like this, not just slightly curved, but really curved. There's some advantages to really curved blades that I think are commonly overlooked and deserve some attention. So let's look at my 5 most surprising or unexpected or neglected, should we say, reasons why curved blades can be advantageous in certain ways. But before we go into that, a very quick word for our amazing sponsors for this video, who are Mova Globes, with a special offer for you. So this video today is sponsored by Mova Globes. Brilliant offer down below. Now, I love Mova Globes. I've actually had one for quite a while, and they make absolutely awesome presents. I can promise you, everyone who comes around to my house wants to pick up my Mova Globe and play with it. If you're wondering how they work, they seem to magically rotate inside. They're powered by light, so long as you've got UV light, they don't require any electricity or any charging or anything like that. They simply sit there under natural light and they rotate really, really calmly and relaxingly. As you can see here, you can pick them up and they float around inside the ball. It's quite mesmerizing. There we go. And of course you can get a variety of different stands. So you've got a whole bunch of different designs. You've got different historical maps from different periods, traditional designs. You've also got sort of stellar, you've got planets, you've got all sorts of funky modern designs. So if you want to buy this for a present for someone for Christmas or whatever, or just buy one for yourself during the Black Friday sale, which they've got going on, then this is absolutely awesome. There's a load of choice there. There's different sizes, different designs, and also different stands that you can put them on as well. And you know, honestly, the educational value of these is amazing as well. Being able to see a globe in your hand, pick it up whenever you like, is a really good way of reminding you where all the countries are, which is very useful for a channel like this when we're talking about weapons and cultures from all over the world. Everyone in my family loves our Mova Globe, and all of our guests want to come in and pick it up. They always want to ask about it, they want to ask how it works, and kids love it as well, and it gets them interested in geography. So my special offer for you today is that if you go to movaglobes.com or click on the link below, using the discount code SCHOLAR, you can get 10% off the 6 or the 8-inch globes. And there's a whole bunch of variety there, there's all sorts of options. And at the moment, there are also Black Friday special deals on as well, so check out the website. And thanks once again to Mova Globes for sponsoring this channel and this video. So thanks for sticking with me. Now let's get back to the main topics of these videos, the 5 surprising advantages of very curved swords. And the first thing I have to say is, of course, there are also disadvantages. But here we're going to look at 5 surprising things you might not have thought of. And if there's any appetite for disadvantages, we'll look at that in a future video. So the first one is relating to cavalry, which I think is somewhat appropriate because these very curved swords are often, if not always, they're often associated with people that used cavalry extensively, as we find in the Middle East, across the Arab-speaking countries, and so on and so forth. Now, this is a shamshear. That means it's modelled on a Persian style of sword. The word shamshear is Persian. Now, one way that these were used on horseback is not how most people think of. Most of you are familiar with the slashing from various angles and draw cutting across. But there's one very important way these were used on horseback that most people don't know about. And that's to thrust, but not to thrust. That's not to say you can't thrust with these. You can, you have to invert the blade. But there's a type of thrust that was done with these very curved blades that people often don't know about. And it's described in 19th century British sources. So really useful benefit there of sort of Victorian expansionism was they described how people fought in other areas. Not always accurately, but sometimes. Now, one of the ways this was used on horseback was, imagine you're galloping along on your horse here and your opponent's over there, they're coming towards you, maybe their sword's up ready to give you a slash across here. One thing you can do which gains maximum reach is to extend your arm out here. Okay, so just like you were giving a thrust with a straight sword, but of course this is an extremely curved sword. And the sword, although you could technically do this with a slightly curved, or even possibly if you did it the right way with a straight sword, this is much easier with this type of very curved blade. And instead of putting the point into the opponent, you essentially hit them with the tip of the blade here. That means that you're thrusting with the edge. You get that? Because it's a very curved blade. So you thrust with the edge into them and you hit them here. So you're hitting them with the same type of reach with an arm extension and near the tip as you would do with a thrust. So it's got the reach advantage as much as you can get with this type of blade. So you're hitting them far out here, you hit them with the front of the edge, and as you go into and past them, their body orb, whatever bit of them you've hit, will slide down the blade this way, and as you go past, you change the angle here and you go round. So you never get your blade stuck in the person. With a straight blade, the point goes in and you have to do a tent pegging like movement to extract it out as you go past. So the same thing with a lance. The point goes in and as you go past, you've got to do this with the arm. And it requires quite a bit of training actually. Not to say this doesn't require training, but in many ways, it's less of a problem because the blade doesn't enter their body with the tip. It's not going to get stuck, so you don't have to extract it so much. You more stroke across the target. So you essentially extend the arm, push the blade into the target, slides across, and you pass around. And another advantage is having done this, imagine there's motion now. As you come in, you hit them here, you draw the blade across there, so that's one wound, and now your blade automatically has momentum to come round with a cut on the way out as well. So you can essentially thrust them with the edge and cut them as they go past as well. So there's the first somewhat surprising advantage of a very curved blade. Now the next advantage is in very close in combat. This could be one-on-one because you're in a confined space. It could be because someone's trying to grapple with you. It could be in a mass melee. It could be in a battlefield. It could be in a jungle or a forest or wherever, inside a building. But the fact is these very curved blades are less likely to get snagged and stuck because they can move circularly and keep moving around without having a long extension here. You can draw the blade easily across and past and through the target really, really close to the body because they are so curved. They are the curve of the circle which that motion assumes. With a straight blade, yeah, you've got more reach, but the problem is, in a close-in environment, okay, without switching to half sword or using parts of your hilt, which is exactly what Europeans did with straight blades, but if you're holding it conventionally, a straight blade is more likely to get caught up and snagged, and it's more difficult to extract in close distance than a curved blade is. And in fact, we do even find that there are some half-swording techniques found in Persian and other Middle Eastern martial arts, and potentially in Indian martial arts as well, though I'm not explicitly aware of that, but I'm sure they do exist. In the same way that we find forms of half-swording even in Japanese martial arts with a katana as well. So the fact is, with a curved blade, even without doing that, you can prevent the blade from getting snagged and stuck in very, very close distance, so you can cut. And there's even an exercise, I've talked about this in a previous video, there's even an exercise that we know is practiced in the Middle East whereby you would place your knee against a tree or a wall and practice giving your cuts at this type of distance. In other words, a drawing cut very, very close. So there's your second advantage. They can be used continuous motion really, really close to the body, which is really good against grappling or in a close pressed in situation. Now, something that often gets neglected when we're talking about curved swords is the scabbard and the way it's worn. Now, one of the peculiarities of a very curved sword like this, whether it's worn point down or worn horizontally, is that because of the curvature, the tip comes up and away from the ground and away from your leg. This means that whether you're on horseback or whether you're on foot, that tip of that sword is less of a problem at getting tangled into things. Now, for anyone who's walked around for a day in a reenactment or even like LARP or even a HEMA event, maybe wearing a sword, you will know that long straight blades are a pain in the butt. Sometimes literally, sometimes as someone else's butt, because they are long straight lines. If you wear them point downwards, and for example you have to crouch to pick something up, the point jams into the ground, so you have to remember to tilt it. When you tilt it, it hits someone behind you in the shin, or even worse. If you're wearing it at an angle like this, it's easier to draw and it's less likely to get stuck on the ground, but then you have a great big tip waving around behind you. This was so much a problem that as rapiers got longer, they had to devise ways of slinging them quite low so that you could get such a long blade out of the scabbard. But additionally, there were even edicts given about the length of blade because they were causing an inconvenience at court. You know, Japanese swords were worn, certainly katana were worn edge up and worn quite high, but it was considered very rude if you bashed someone else with your scabbard. The fact is that all over the world, whenever people have worn swords, wearability and convenience is a major factor, because remember, these spend way more percentage of their existence being worn than actually being held in the hand or used in a fight. So the way that the convenience of wearing these is incredibly important. So there we go. Third point is that the point being such a curved blade, it occupies less horizontal space or vertical space, depending which direction it's pointing in. And because it's curved up, it's less likely to be a problem for your feet or the ground. And if you're riding on a horse, it's less likely to be a problem even for your stirrups or the flank of the horse or things like that. So quite simply, in many ways, these are more convenient and easier to wear. So the fourth point is something that often gets neglected with very curved swords, and that is thrusting, but not the thrusting you're thinking about. So I think most of you will be aware of the fact that with a curved blade, it's more difficult to do a traditional straight thrust that you would do with a straight blade. Generally speaking, straight blades, if you want a predominantly thrusting fight style, straight blades are the way to go. They generate more force into the target because there's a straight line behind the point. And you've got better blade occupation of the space in front of you while you give point. So, you know, rapiers and small swords and side swords and long swords are generally speaking, better thrusting weapons. However, these weapons can thrust in various ways, and one of the ways that most people know about is that they can come around an opponent's sword. Okay, because of the curved blade, if you give a cut here and a person parries, you can flip the sword round and thrust from the other side. I think most people are aware of that. But there's another type of thrusting which often gets neglected. So I'm going to grab something as an exaggerated example for a second, and that is the Roman scutum here. Now, if we go back to the age of the gladiators, the gladiatorial games, there was a type of curved sword called a sika used by the Thracian, and it is thought that this was particularly good at getting around the opponent's shield, which a straight blade, although a straight blade can get around, it can't do it so easily. Now, in all places where these curved swords were used, various types of shield, I'll just grab one over here, various types of, usually circular, but not always, shield were used. In India, in Persia, in the Middle East, North Africa, these types of shields were often used. Sometimes they were fairly large like this, sometimes they were smaller bucklers, but the fact is that with a curved blade, you stand a better chance of, if you've come in here and a person's covered with their shield, of flipping it around and thrusting around the back of their shield. So, quite simple point, with a curved blade, you're more able to thrust round shields. And given that these exist as a unit with shields and bucklers, in all of the places these very curved blades were used, shields and bucklers were also extremely normal and prevalent and pretty much universal. So therefore the ability to thrust around those becomes a really important thing. So the fifth and final advantage of a subtle or lesser known advantage of very curved blades is, in a nutshell, being easier to thrust the opponent in the hand. What do I mean by that? So, in a world where people are giving cuts with weapons like this, one of the problems with thrusting in the hand is that with a straight blade, if you place your weapon and your hand in a straight line, which gives the greatest reach and the greatest penetration, and generally speaking is a good thing, but if a person's cutting at you and you thrust at their hand, there is always the risk that their hand will get stabbed, but the momentum of their blade will still carry on down and hit you in the hand anyway. And it's one of the problems, if I just grab another straight blade here, completely different type, but it's two straight blades. It is one of the problems always when two straight blades point at each other's hands. What you often get is a double hand hit. Now, later on, we get things like this rapier guard, which prevent that from being a big problem. But when we're in the world of simple medieval cross guards or messer hilts or shamshir hilts, the hand is quite exposed. And any time that the two blades become completely parallel for whatever reason, whatever you do to offend the opponent's hand is often going to bring your own hand at risk. However, if we have a shamshir, If we were to cut at the hands, the straight sword would always win because the blade is bending upwards away from the hand. Okay, however, if we flip that around, the reverse now becomes true. What it does is it lifts my hand further away from the straight blade and brings the point very close to the opponent's hand. This can be applied from a number of different angles. It could be applied downwards, but more usually perhaps applied from the side, okay? By applying a thrust to the incoming attack, with whether they've got a straight blade or a curved blade, doesn't make any difference. By applying the point into their hand here, my hand is far away. I can do the same from this side. I can do the same from below. And as mentioned, I could do the same from above, but generally speaking, cuts are moving crosswards or downwards. And sometimes they're moving upwards, in which case you could do that. But the point is that because of the curve, by applying the thrust to the opponent's hand here, your hand is further away from the line of their sword. So therefore it's safer than with a straight sword. So there we go, 5 hopefully unexpected advantages of a really, really curved sword like this LK Chen Shamshir here, which is really lovely. And I haven't cut anything with it yet, but it's super sharp and I'm really looking forward to getting going on some bottles and other targets with it. So thanks a lot for watching. I hope those 5, at least some of them, have been surprising, thought-provoking, inspiring, whatever to you. I hope it's been interesting, that's the main thing. And I hope I'll see you back on the channel really, really soon. Check out all the links below because some of them might be interesting to you. And I hope to see you again soon. Take care, and I have been Matt Easton and I will continue to be. Cheers folks. Thanks for watching. We've got extra videos on Patreon. Please give our Facebook a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Cheers folks.